1944. Somewhere in the muddy back roads of France, a Panther tank rolled forward like it owned the battlefield. The crew had done this dozens of times. Same routine, same confidence. Then, without warning, reality broke. There was no deafening blast, no shower of sparks, no heroic duel of armor and shells. There was just a sound. A sharp hiss, like steam escaping from a boiler. The Panther's side armor, 40 millimeters of carefully hardened German steel, did something it was never supposed to do. It didn't crack, it didn't spall, it didn't even explode. It opened. For a split second, it was as if someone had taken a white-hot drill, the size of a finger, and pushed it straight through the tank's flank. A perfect circle, edges glowing. No jagged edges, no torn metal, just a clean wound in the steel. Inside, everything happened too fast for the human brain to process. The loader never finished his movement toward the breach. One moment his hand was on the shell. The next, the air inside the turret turned into a blast furnace. A wave of superheated gas roared through the compartment, carrying a storm of molten metal droplets you could never see, only feel, if you had time to feel anything at all. Lungs collapsed before men could scream. Uniforms darkened, then smoked. Paint blistered on the inside walls of the tank. From the outside, the Panther just stopped. No dramatic turret flying into the sky, no Hollywood explosion. The engine coughed, the tracks ground to a halt, and then there was only the thin column of black smoke rising from around the hatches. Only one man managed to climb out. The driver dragged himself onto the hull, skin scorched, eyebrows burned away, eyes wide with a kind of disbelief you only see once in a lifetime. Medics grabbed him, shouting questions he barely understood. He rasped out 2 words in a broken, ash-filled whisper. That wasn't a shell. His officers thought he was delicious. The engineers didn't. When they examined that Panther later, what they found terrified them. The armor plate hadn't been shattered by brute force. It had been pierced by something smaller, faster, and far, far stranger. Within weeks, German tank crews had a nickname for it, the witch rounds. Because of them, that's exactly what it felt like. Not a better bullet, not a clever trick, but something that ignored all the rules they'd learned since the first time they climbed into a tank. Here's the part most people have never heard of. This wasn't some secret death ray or a forbidden chemical weapon. It wasn't Tesla's heat beam or science fiction scenery. It was something far more uncomfortable, a handful of quiet American engineers with slide rules and tungsten carbide and a laboratory project that escaped onto the battlefield. In the next few minutes, we're going to rewind this whole story. Back to the days when American crews in Shermans felt like they were bringing a knife to a gunfight. Back to the test ranges where the first hotshot was fired. Into the snow-choked forests of the Ardennes, where German veterans who'd survived, Russia suddenly started refusing to advance. And finally, to the moment when the heaviest tank Germany ever built discovered that, against the right piece of metal moving fast enough, invincible is just a word. And one more thing, as strange as this story already sounds, there's an even more unsettling detail coming up. The part where Germany's own scientists realized they understood this weapon perfectly and still couldn't stop it. By late 1944, American tank crews already knew the truth. Shermans weren't built for duels with Panthers. A Panther's frontal armor could shrug off a Sherman shot like it was nothing. Gunners watched their own rounds bounce while German 75mm guns cut straight through them. Crews joked darkly that fighting Panthers was suicide in reverse. If you missed your first shot, you usually didn't get a second. Morale was draining fast. Letters home complained that the Sherman's gun might as well be throwing rocks. Commanders reported crews refusing to engage head-on because they knew the math didn't favor them. That's exactly when a quiet group of engineers back in Maryland decided to stop trying to make a bigger shell and instead tried to make a smarter one. Aberdeen Proving Ground had been testing a strange new idea, a tiny tungsten core wrapped in a lightweight shell that fell away in flight. It wasn't heavier. It wasn't explosive. It was simply faster than anything tank crews had ever fired. They called it HVAP, High Velocity Armor Piercing. Soldiers gave it a better nickname, Hot Shot. But there was a catch. Only a tiny number existed. Tungsten was rare, expensive, and everyone from bomber factories to machine tool plants needed it. So, when the first shipment arrived in France, only veteran crews got a few rounds each. The instructions were simple: use these only when you absolutely must kill something big. Nobody told them how it actually worked. Nobody warned them what it would do to a tank crew. They were about to find out. The first time HVAP was fired in combat, even the Americans didn't believe what they were seeing. Near the French city of Metz, a Sherman gunner named Hartley lined up on a Panther at roughly 800 yards. Normally, that was a hopeless shot. A regular shell would just bounce. He loaded one of the new rounds anyway. Fired. The recoil felt sharper, and then something strange happened. The Panther didn't explode. It didn't catch fire. It didn't even swing its turret. It just stopped. A moment later, smoke curled out from the hatches. Then, silence. When engineers inspected the wreck, they found a perfect round hole, smooth, clean, and hotter than anything they'd ever seen inside a tank. The crew hadn't been thrown around or torn apart. They'd been hit by a wave of pressure and heat so intense it killed them before they understood they'd been in danger. Word spread fast. Tank crews who received HVAP began hoarding it, labeling it, protecting it as like a treasure, because suddenly the balance had shifted. For the first time, Shermans could kill Panthers before Panthers killed them. But across the lines, something else was spreading. Fear. German tank crews started reporting invisible hits. Tanks knocked out with a single silent shot. Crew members dead without obvious wounds. Rumors spread like wildfire: incendiary rounds, chemical weapons, even talk of a heat ray. Nobody knew the truth. It wasn't magic. It was physics. Just very, very fast physics. And the first time Panthers ran into it during a major battle, the entire front felt shocked. December 1940. 4. The Ardennes. Snow, fog, chaos. German armor punched through American lines with confidence. Panthers led the charge, certain nothing on the battlefield could touch them head-on. But this time, some Shermans had HVAP, and that changed everything. In the forests around Bastogne, visibility was terrible. The range was short. Crews were exhausted, cold, and running low on supplies. But they still held on to a few precious tungsten rounds. Orders were strict. Don't waste HVAP. Don't fire until the tank fills your sight. Make every shot count. When the Panthers came out of the tree line at dawn, the Shermans didn't panic. They waited. 70 yards, 60, 50, then one shot. A Panther's frontal armor, normally unbeatable at that distance, cracked open like it wasn't even there. The tank rolled 10 feet farther and died in the snow. Its crew never made it out. Another HVAP round clipped the turret of a second Panther. One hit. Another dead tank. A third Panther hesitated, trying to reverse it too late. By the time the firefight ended, American tanks had fired a handful of HVAP rounds, and 7 German tanks lay smoking. That's when the real damage started. German crews began refusing to advance without infantry. Some demanded extra armor welded to their tanks. Others faked mechanical breakdowns rather than pushing forward. One tanker, a veteran who had survived Kursk, reportedly off himself rather than facing another HVAP engagement. German intelligence scrambled to understand what was happening. Reports claimed the Americans had a new, unknown weapon. Some officers suggested that they ban chemicals. Others blamed Tesla-style energy beams. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. Tungsten traveling faster than anything they had ever seen. For the first time in the war, German armor crews felt something unfamiliar, helpless. Here's the part most people don't realize. Germany knew exactly what was happening. Their scientists understood the principle behind HVAP. They weren't confused by physics. They had even made their own tungsten core rounds earlier in the war. But they ran into one problem they couldn't overcome: no tungsten. By late 1944, Germany had lost access to almost every major tungsten source in Europe. Spain and Portugal, the two biggest suppliers, were selling their wolfram ore almost entirely to the Allies. Meanwhile, the Allies were doing everything possible to buy up the world's tungsten simply to keep it out of German hands. So even when German metallurgists were shown captured HVAP damage reports, even when they understood the exact science behind it, they couldn't create a proper counter. They had brains, just not metal. German crews tried improvising, bolted on plates, makeshift spaced armor, angled side panels, even sandbags on side hulls. Nothing worked. The tungsten cores were simply too fast. And that's when fear turned into something deeper, a kind of quiet acceptance. If the Americans had HVAP and the Germans had no tungsten, there was no solution coming. Not from engineering, not from tactics, not from Berlin, just a slow countdown to the moment when every Panther and Tiger would eventually meet a round that didn't care how thick their armor was. March 1945, the Rhine. Germany pulled back its last reserve of pride, the King Tiger, 180 millimeters of frontal armor, the thickest, strongest tank plating of the entire war. Crews honestly believed that nothing the Allies had could punch through it. And then the Americans arrived with upgraded tungsten rounds for their 90 millimeters guns. The moment of truth came fast. A King Tiger positioned hull down, presenting its strongest point, exactly where it was supposed to be invincible. A U.S. tank destroyer fired a single T-30 E-16 tungsten round. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Even the German crew inside probably smirked. Then the tank's hatches blew open. A column of black smoke rose from the inside. The turret didn't fly. Off it didn't need to. The interior was already gone. The tungsten dart had done what the manual said was impossible. The other King Tigers didn't wait for a second shot. They reversed out of sight. That was the moment. The myth of German armor superiority finally died. Not with fanfare, not with a dramatic explosion, just a single, clean hole drilled through steel that was never supposed to be penetrated. After the Rhine crossing, engineers inspected destroyed Panthers, Tigers, and King Tigers. What they found was chilling. Perfectly round entry holes, steel edges melted, smooth interiors, scorched crews killed instantly by pressure and heat. No drama, no glory, just physics. And here's the quiet truth historians discovered later. HVAP rounds made up less than 5% of the ammo American tanks fired in Europe, but they accounted for over 30% of confirmed heavy German tank kills in the final months. A tiny number of experimental shells had changed the war's balance, not by brute force, not by explosions, but by making German tank crews feel something even worse than danger: uncertainty. When a Panther crew no longer trusts its armor, when a Tiger commander hesitates before pushing forward, when a King Tiger gunner wonders if today's the day a round ignores his 180 millimeters plate, the battle is already shifting. When the war ended, surviving German tankers rarely talked about the tungsten rounds. Many simply called it the burning shot. Some refused to describe it at all. And American tankers? Most felt pride. Some felt relief. A few admitted they felt something darker, Gil, because HVAP didn't just kill tanks. It ended fights instantly. No chance to bail out. No time to react. Just a flash. And Silence. But the science that seemed like witchcraft in 1944 didn't disappear. Today, every modern anti-tank weapon, from tac-fired sabots to long-range missiles, descends from the same principle: a small, ultra-dense dart moving impossibly fast. The armor may be different. The vehicles may have changed, but the lesson remains the same. In war, the thickest steel doesn't win. The best physics is. Conclusion: the round that changed everything. The story of HVAP isn't just a chapter in tank history. It's the moment the battlefield tipped from big guns versus thick armor to something colder, sharper, and more scientific. A moment when tungsten, pressure, and velocity mattered more than size or bravado. A moment that ended one era of warfare and launched the next. And for the men who lived through iron both sides, there was no forgetting the sound of it. Not a boom, not a crack, just a hiss, a flash, and the knowledge that the rules they trusted could vanish in an instant. The shell that wasn't a shell, the weapon that didn't explode, the round that melted through legend. Tungsten, traveling at the speed of inevitability.